Welcome back to Retirement News Online. I'm your host, Carrie Osep. And most investors, they think risk is just the market going down, but true risk is far more complex, especially for people nearing or in retirement. Well, here to help us understand the different types of risk you may face while building a plan that protects your lifestyle is Max Collins out of Los Angeles. Max, thanks so much for joining us.
Of course, glad to be here.
Yeah, so Max, let's talk about risk, shall we? How do you help people understand the difference between market volatility and long-term risk to their retirement income?
Yeah, of course. There's always going to be market volatility out there. And a big thing is, and you've probably all heard of this word, diversification. There's a simple rule where it's called 100 minus your age rule. And this can really help set up for your long-term goals, because it works great for when you're starting off your career and your investment future to when you're ending your career and now wanting to use your income. When you think about 100 minus your age rule, let's use an example. Let's say somebody is starting off and they're 30 into investments. You'll take 100 minus 30, obviously that gives you 70. The resulting answer is how much money you should have placed in equities and pretty volatile investments that can earn you a potentially greater return, where your age should be placed into fixed income, things like U.S. Treasuries, bonds, money markets, CDs. That's the money that is going to be protecting your portfolio. And so as you grow in age throughout life, obviously that ratio changes. And so as you get closer to retirement now, let's say now you're 70, right? Okay. Now the resulting answer, 100 minus 70, is 30. So 30% only should be structured in equities and long-term growth strategies, where 70% should be in fixed income. And out of those two solutions, there's so many different types of investments. But when you stay on track with the 100 minus your age rule, it places you to understand, what portion of my investments should be protected against market volatility and what portion of my assets should be out there in the market trying to, gain a greater growth.
And that's why we work with people like you, numbers guys, not a numbers girl over here. Try to be, okay. But what tools or strategies do you use to measure that real risk tolerance, and not just through like a questionnaire, but let's say through behavior or objectives?
Oh, that's a good question, because everybody is a little bit different. So I asked somebody about a basic story. So I'll first start it off, engage it with the 100 minus your age rule, right? But somebody might not fit that bracket particularly. And a funny thing I'll do is just, okay, you and your family go on a 2-week vacation, 3-week vacation, and obviously
4-week vacation. Why not?
Let's go crazy. And let's say your investments are doing very solid, so you're not even in the mindset of checking them when you're on vacation, but you come back and you see that your investments decrease by 10, 15, or 20%. So if you had $100,000, how would you feel coming back from vacation seeing that you only have $90,000, $80,000, $70,000 in your investments? If we look all the way back from 2008, one of the biggest market crashes from the mortgage crash that we had in 2008, that decline happened in a matter of days in October. That's why I use that vacation scenario. How would you feel seeing that amount of loss in your investment portfolio? Would you think, okay, I know it's going to bounce back? So is your response, oh, I know it's going to bounce back, I don't mind if I just lost $30,000? Or is your response, oh my gosh, I'm terrified, what am I going to do? The world is crashing on top of me. That's when you might find yourself as a little bit more conservative than even if your age bracket is. So that's when we'll make adjustments from that 100 minus your age rule to say, hey, even if you are 30 right now, where that means 70% of your investments should be out there in equities, maybe we scale that back. Maybe we only put 50 or 60% of your investments out in equities because your response to that simple question just led us to understand you're more conservative than you ought to be at your age.
Yeah, and talking about turbulent markets, how do you just educate clients and give them confidence instead of, most of us would probably follow our emotion when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How are you making sure that we feel confident to make that right move?
The broadest stock market index is the S&P 500. Whenever there's market volatility, and we've seen that a lot over the years.
Unfortunately.
Yes, we've seen that at the beginning of this year in 2025. There was a 20% decrease from January to April, and we've already seen that come back. We saw COVID. Actually before that, we saw 2022, when interest rates spiked because inflation was at like 9%. And then we saw a 20 to 30% decrease in some of these indices. That happened in 2022. In COVID times, we saw even a sharper spike down. But now let's expand this chart out even 30 years. What do you see happening? Well, back in 1990, the S&P 500 was at so much of a lower point than it is right now, sitting at around 6,800 points. The stock market is never going to go down to zero. It's important to stay on track with your long-term financial goals and just eliminate that fear in the current response of maybe the news, telling you that the world is ending when it's really not. The stock market will always persist and will always continue to grow. It's never going to be to a point where it drops down to zero. So just stay in line with your retirement goals and don't go off track. You have a goal, you have a plan, stick with it.
Stay in line and align yourself with someone like Max Collins. And Max, if anyone wants to maybe sit down and talk with you and learn from you, where can they find you?
You guys can find me on federalbenefitservice.com. Just go to the benefits review tab, go ahead and put in your information, and we can schedule a complimentary benefits review to assist you all with your financial literacy and education.
Easy enough. Numbers guy, gotta go after him. Thanks so much, Max, for your time, and thank you all for watching us right here on Retirement News Online.